like you and I said, we don't know it all. We're doing the best we can do in our worlds. I'm sure there are people out there that could debunk what I'm saying and say AI could be outbound, inbound, all the things into AI platforms that I've, seen and worked. And I've seen a lot of service trade companies try to use it, and after 30, 60 days, abandon it and go back to humans. So I'm sure it'll catch up with us, but it's certainly a debate.
Yeah.
But these philosophies literally work in a bakery, a butcher shop. Right now in our stable for consulting clients, we have a charter school, we have a site clearing company, we've got several pest control companies, bakery. It works. Every single one of these I can find, all they're teaching you is a framework. And I teach the exact same framework. Not the exact same. I have my own proprietary blend of it, but it's the same theories and it's the same strategies for a fraction of their cost.
Through the Noise, Business Life, and Life. It's a podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Steele, and I'm excited to have round two of this guest. He was on the podcast. He was one of the first guests we had a couple years. Anytime you start something new, you make a lot of mistakes, and glad to redo that one because the sound was a little off. Super pumped about this. He's become a good friend over the years, a great mentor, just an incredible businessman. He's built businesses. He's helped others scale to multiple 10+ million businesses and exit those businesses, which is key. So I'm super excited to introduce Mickey Lyles. Welcome to the stage, Mickey.
Hey, Trevor, man, I appreciate you having me back. I'm excited to be here and to share with your guests.
Yeah, man. So like I said before, we had you on. You actually came to the office and sat down. It was a really, really good interview. But when I went back to listen, and I'm sure you did too, the sound was just not there, which was really disappointing. But I think we've got it put together. I've got Jai in the background running my production side. And so I think we're going to get something taken care of today.
Awesome, man. I look forward to it. It's always a good time talking to you, and I appreciate you having me back.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting is you're only my second guest I've ever interviewed that's nearby physically, right? Because most of the people in our industry, I'm in the home service industry, I know people all over the country, and those are kind of the guys that I interview. So having you so close is super. But tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, kind of your humble beginnings. And I know a lot about your story, but so try not to leave it too much out. Give us what the real Mickey Lyles.
Yeah, man. No, I appreciate that open platform. It's hard to, not get long-winded because I get excited about, where I'm from and what I'm trying to help other people do in that same space. But I grew up in a small town in South Carolina, literally on a dirt road. I know that sounds like a metaphor a lot of times, but literally on a dirt road with 4 brothers. And, just like the rest of the world, I mean, you bob around in your 20s trying to figure out what life has for you, and you're kind of from one job to the next. And I don't know that there's really a thought about being a destiny, or you don't have vision necessarily. See, today's generation has so much access to so much information to be inspired by. I didn't grow up with social media, so we weren't watching other people do all these great things. We were running around trying to hit each other in the back of the legs with sticks,
Yeah, I was in that generation. I may not look or, I definitely feel like it, but yeah, we didn't have social media. I graduated high school. Facebook really wasn't a thing until 2000 around, but nobody was doing it, right? It was MySpace and then Facebook in the early 2000s. So when I graduated high school, I didn't have a Facebook account.
I tell people all the time, I was like, do you know that the iPhone came out in 2008? I was one of the people in the original line, and the commercial got me because you could turn it sideways and read the New York Times. And I was enamored by being able to read the newspaper on a phone. And so 2008, I mean, that's 17 years ago. And so on one hand, 17 years sounds like a long time, but when you apply it to your life, there was just a lot of things that young entrepreneurs have today. And they have so much more opportunity to be able to scale and grow their businesses because they have access to mentors, even without knowing them, right? Through the social media platforms, and access to just information in general, whether it's through, this thing called the internet. Podcast, and certainly now AI. But yeah, I mean, humble beginnings, full disclosure, I'm a college dropout and really didn't know what I wanted to do with life. And then back in 2009, my dad died, unfortunately, of a heart attack at 58 years old. And it sort of sent my life in a spiral a little bit for a couple of years. I mean, it really, you realize like you kind of see your parents as indestructible for a certain period of your life, and then you don't have them, right? And it's like nobody's coming to save you. There's not any windfall. There is no inheritance. My dad was come from very humble beginnings and had very little when he passed away. And so you realize like you got to go do something different if you want to have something different. And so some of the same principles that I started applying around 2010, 11, 12 are the exact same principles I'm applying today. Make sure that you know what rooms you're in, surround yourself with people that can help you grow and accomplish your goals. And there's an old saying, I didn't create it, but show me your friends and I'll show you your future. I think that became a big part of it, but just win, at entrepreneurship and it being solopreneurs. And man, I was keeping this notebook and I was so excited. I was learning everything I could at every lunch meeting, and I was going to open my own pest control company at that time. But I ended up opening a consulting company in 2014 instead, and consulting with pest control companies based on everything I'd learned on who was winning. And so it's been quite the journey the last 11 years. It does seem like it's been longer than that for my age, but boy, has there been a lot of growth in the last 11 years. And all the people that we've helped, all the things I've learned, all the amazing people I've met across the country, conferences and customers that we work with, it's been pretty special. So
can I ask you a tough question?
What's that?
In 2000, when you started doing it, did you feel qualified?
No, man. Let me tell you, I fought the imposter syndrome significantly as a college dropout. And also too, I'm real hung up on age. And these younger folks, I've met so many of them, they're not hung up on age, man. There's 28-year-old CEOs of multi-million dollar companies. And I always felt like, man, nobody's going to listen to you until you're like 40 years old. Like, what do you have to tell anybody? And if you can't show them where you've done it, where you've had your own business, why are they going to listen to you, right? I used to have, and this is a very, very inaccurate statement, but I used to say it all the time. I don't take golf lessons from somebody that can't beat me. Well, Tiger Woods took golf lessons from Butch Harmon, and I promised Tiger could beat his coach. But what I learned from that ill approach is that coaches can see things you can't see, even if they're better at it than you are, like the Tiger Woods, Butch Harmon relationship. So what I am happy about, though, especially for your listeners or any future clients, I'm not just a consultant. I've owned over 23 companies in all kind of spaces: pest control, plumbing, mattress industry, a mortgage brokerage company, real estate company. So all kind of different industries. And I love that because it proves my point about businesses that true good business fundamentals work no matter what the top line deliverable for revenue is. Lighting business, pressure washing business, the fundamentals remain the same. And that's really what we focus on teaching small business owners.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned fundamentals. I think the fundamentals is the easiest part of business to overlook, right? I'm constantly telling myself, go back to the basics, go back to the basics, go back to the basics, serve your clients, serve your people, do what you say you're going to do, right? Go back to the basics. Cause it's so to live in the future. And I know all entrepreneurs struggle with this. We're entrepreneurs, we're builders, we're creators, we're not sustainers, right? We're not good at managing the day to day. That's not our thing. We're like, all right, this is created. Let's move on to the next thing now, right? That somebody else should be handling this part. But so it's like with a certain level, you have to go back to the basics. So I love that you focus on the fundamentals, because I think that's the biggest piece that most of us are missing.
Yeah, particularly when the SBA classifies small businesses as anything under 50 million. For a guy that grew up on a dirt road and came from a small town in South Carolina, that's a big business. But most of our clients are under 20 million, and a great portion of them are under 2 million. And when you get to that place where that entrepreneur is right at that ceiling and they're bouncing their head off that ceiling, it's easy to overlook the fundamentals like you're talking about. But more importantly, they start focusing on big business ideas and topics, and they start stepping over dollars, and they don't realize they're stepping over dollars. Yeah. I remember going to a conference with one of the largest, if not the largest, he's definitely top 3 entrepreneurs out of Nashville, Tennessee. His name's Jimmy Hiller. He owns Happy Hiller Plumbing, HVAC, and Electrical. I think they did something like 350 million or something last year. Started with like $500. I've read his book. Unbelievable story. scaled from like $8 million in 2015 to $52 million in 2013. So, 2005 to 2013. So in like 8 years, he went from like 8 million to 50 million. Why? Because he started working with a coaching company that showed him how to systematically build repeatable processes and create maximum yield and growth. And so I look at those stories, and I've been in Jimmy's presence. I used to be in an organization where I had access to him and could email him and talk to him, but he always talked about the fundamentals and the little things. But when I was at the last presentation, they had his marketing guy come in. They were spending $1.5 million a year on marketing. Well, if you're $2 million and you get so focused on marketing that you stop paying attention to the customer or to how you can create ancillary sales, have 3 services sold instead of 1, you're really stepping over not just dollars, but tens of dollars, chasing something that you sort of a myth. You're chasing something you see the big boys do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard not to. How do I get to that level? Well, it's hard, and it takes time. I watched one of your, must have been a short or a reel. I think you posted it today talking about, slowing down and understanding that these things take time. Talk about that some, because I thought it was a good reel.
Yeah. So, it's like today. I met with a plumbing company today, and they're just like probably a lot of your listeners that are self-employed or started from they're grinding. And they start talking, man, I'm trying to be the marketing person. I'm trying to be the bookkeeper. I'm trying to be the accountant and the CPA. I'm trying to be the technician. I'm trying to be the ops manager. I'm trying to be the CSR. I'm trying to be all these things. How can you really help me grow my business? And I'm like, well, we've got to generate revenue and create a savings plan to be able to hire your first employee, and one job at a time, be able to back you out of working into business and working on the business. And I know that gets so overplayed. Every coach, every person with an ad on social media about helping somebody scale a business talks about working on it versus in it. And it is so much easier said than done. A few fortunate people are able to start companies and say, listen, I'm going to put up some capital. I know I'm going to burn cash for the first year, and I'm going to hire the CSR and the sales guy and the manager and myself, and we don't have any business. And they're going to go rushing into the marketplace, and good for them if they have that. But a great majority of American entrepreneurs have to bootstrap it. And so understanding when to pull that plug and when to sort of say, it's time I spend a little cash in order to grow is very, very important. It's very important.
Yeah. I like called it creating a savings plan, because I've never actually heard anybody speak on that. Everybody does exactly what you said. Well, you got to have a CSR, so just hire a CSR. The position should make you money, right? It's so easy to hear these things, and especially if you're like me, where your cash flow, that's you need that cash flow, Yeah. So it's like when you hear someone say, "Oh, you just need to hire them and they should bring in the money," it's really hard to grasp that unless you can create a plan to arrive there. So tell us a little bit about that. What you called it, a savings plan.
Yeah, so I like to merge my personal financial philosophies with my business philosophy. So I'm a product of Dave Ramsey on the personal side of things. When I first got started on this journey in like 2012, I was just like every is a superlative, but I was just like the majority of America, right? I was living the life. I was $100,000 in credit card debt. I had the boats, the jet skis, the cars, the houses. Everything was mortgaged and loaned to the hilt. And it was all about just being able to make payments. So when I found out who Dave Ramsey was, and of course, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And so this guy tells me, a friend of mine, and it's a story in of itself, probably for a different day, different time. But
no, we got time.
Have you ever heard of Dave Ramsey? And I'm like, no. And he goes, dude, you got to check this guy out. He can really help you with your personal finances. And so I read the book, Total Money Makeover. And I said, you know what, I'm going all in on this thing. He calls it, you're going beans and rice, rice and beans, you're gazelle intense. I've listened to so many Dave Ramsey episodes, I'm confident I could run his radio show. But my wife and I got in it together, and we did it. And we went about 20 months, and it took us to get debt free. We were in a lot of debt, but we had a pretty big shovel. I was making decent money. She was making decent money, and we got debt free. So now here you are, you want to be an entrepreneur, don't have any debt on the personal side, but I also don't have any capital. So how are you going to open a business if you don't have any capital? Now, this is where I have to deviate a little bit from my love for Dave Ramsey. He has a model that's made him hundreds of millions of dollars, and he can't ever endorse borrowing money. I understand that. For me, I've created my own personal strategy called the no debt strategy, meaning we're not going to take any debt on anything personal, because if the business fails, they're not coming to take my house or my car, right? I need to have security over there. So as long as I don't owe any money personally, then I'm safe. I can sleep and I can, buy groceries. But on the business side, there is a lot. So you look at the other side of Dave Ramsey, like Robert Kiyosaki, I think. Not exactly how to pronounce his last name, but Rich Dad, Poor Dad is use the bank's money to make money. And I can tell you over the last 12 years, I've made a lot of money borrowing the bank's money and not having a dime in it. But of course, Dave talks about, well, you're not factoring in risk. Well, life is risk. Life is short. You got one life to live. Sometimes, like Steve Harvey says, you got to jump. Sometimes you just got to jump. So to your point about the savings account is you don't want to go take on debt in a business if you don't have any sort of nest egg for a rainy day fund, right? So in the Dave Ramsey 7 baby steps, the very first thing is save a baby emergency fund. Step 2 is pay off your debt. Step 3 is save a 6-month emergency fund. So before I would borrow money in a business, I wanted to have a 6-month emergency fund for that payment. Because, for example, you're in the pressure washing business. Are you busier in July or in December?
July.
Right. So July, there's plenty of cash flow. Making the payment is no problem. But what about January and February, or December, January, February? That's a problem. So why, as business owners, do we think about putting our 401k for the future? We think about having a Christmas savings fund with our wife to make sure we can get through Christmas, or we just have an emergency fund for, flat tire or transmission goes out. But we're running on thin ice on a shoestring budget in our businesses instead of having a savings account. So there's a book that I read probably 8 or 10 years ago called Profit First. And really, when I looked at that, it was like, listen, I got to take the first fruits and I got to put them in a savings account before I expand my operation cost. And that allowed me to sleep a little better at night, knowing that in any industry, you're going to have swings. Even, for example, you and I live down in a touristy area on the coast. The summer is loaded. I think last time I looked at records from Horry County, it was like 18 million visitors a year. Well, if I own a little bakery or an ice cream shop, I'm really busy. I'm doing really good during the summer. But when all the vacationers go home after Labor Day, I'm really struggling. And then I see them all the time. I see them close up shop. And I'm like, why didn't you save a 6-month emergency fund where you could pay your bills without ever opening the door? By the time you run out of savings, it's back to your season and you're back to free cash flow again. So, yeah, I mean, I really like having a little savings account for all my businesses. And I just think it helps you sleep better at night. But I think it's something that a lot of small business owners overlook.
Yeah. So would you specifically plan for that? Let's call it the next hire is the CSR. Would you specifically plan a savings account and set a goal before you hire the CSR?
Yeah, I would. I think you need at least like a 3-month running, outside of your emergency fund savings account. I think I would plan for it and probably have like 3 months of their salary to get the ball rolling. Why? Because are they going to make you money week one?
No,
you got to train them. They might not know how to work your operating software, whether that's Jobber, whether that's
it would be
Titan.
You'd be so peaceful knowing that, all right, I've got 3 months to get this person up to speed. If you told me I had months, I could work with that. But if I'm a cash flow business, right, my personal life depends on my cash flow of my business, which that's where I'm at. Let's be honest. Then if I don't have that 3-month savings, I'm very nervous about that new hire.
Yeah,
so I really like that. I like that idea.
Yeah. I mean, and people go, well, that sounds great. Well, where are you going to get that money from?
Right.
I'm saying, where do you get any money from? This is the thing that I try to get. So we're all involved in a lot of things. You are, I am, all true entrepreneurial spirits are involved in a lot of things. So I can almost get muddied a little bit at a measure. Like primarily, we help small business owners create systems and processes and grow. But then I also do one-on-one coaching with men. I do financial coaching, personal budgeting, things like that. More of a passion project than really an income stream. But what I always tell these folks that I coach is simply this. Look at your life. I don't care if you're 28, 38, 68. Think about everything you've been through. Think about the worst times of your life when you were down and out. And I can recall them as I'm sitting here saying these words, the worst times of my life, right? That when you just don't know how you're going to survive another week. You feel like you're at your wit's end. And now look at where you're at today. You survived it all. You got through it. You thought you were broke, but somehow you didn't starve to death because you're alive today. You found a way to eat the next piece of bologna and one slice of white bread, right? Like you figured it out. We can figure it out. If I tell any, you got a one-man operator pressure washing business, a plumbing company, a guy out there killing bugs and pest control, no matter what they're doing, if I'm like, look, man, you got to save up $8,000, and if you will save $8,000, I'll show you how to build a business. Well, how's that going to matter? Well, we're going to get a CSR, or we're going to, whatever the critical position that company needs is, and give you a running start. Go do that extra job on Saturday morning. Go do that extra job on Tuesday afternoon. Run a
that's what we do. I can come up with $8,000. Like, that's what we do best, is find money, right?
Yeah, you just go find it, right? You run a special, you do flyers on mailboxes, you do whatever you have to do. But if you do nothing, I promise you in a year, you're going to be the same place you are right now, right?
Yeah. I love that. It's very tangible. I love that. And I'm going to do it, actually, because my next hire is a CSR. I'm going to finally retire my wife, or I take that back. I'm going to move her to a new category. She'll be the VP, a true VP of operations. Yeah. But right now she's inundated with that phone system, right? And it's a lot. It's a lot to handle. She doesn't want to answer the phones anymore. And quite frankly, she shouldn't be. We're starting to grow too much, and we need a CSR. So our next hire is a CSR. Next goal, in your eyes, is put away 3 months, start looking for that hire. Right.
Yeah, a CSR in our area is probably starting out costing you $2,500, $3,000 a month. So you're probably $7,500 to $9,000, and then you can have that run and start. Hey, the majority of your episodes, I know who your guests are and have a feeling who your listeners are. Let's talk for a minute about this new AI phone service thing. We're talking about CSRs, why it's working and why it's not working. I'm going to share a quick story from last night, and I'd love to know your perspective and certainly any comments, from anybody listening that we can answer. But last night I had to call, and I'm not going to name who it was, but there's a local HVAC company that I had done some work with, did a pretty big install for me last summer in 2024. We were having a thermostat issue at one of my commercial buildings, and I called his personal cell number. And as I was dialing the number, one of my employees said, hey, he sold the company, don't you? And I said, what? He sold the company? He said, yeah, the technicians were in here about a month ago, said he sold the company. I said, I had no idea. So I'm calling his personal cell number. Well, this lady answers, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So part of the purchase was his number, because everybody was probably used to calling his number. Well, it took about 90 seconds. It was so good. The AI was so good. It took about 90 seconds for me to pick up on it, but it finally glitched a little bit and sounded a little robotic. And I stopped and said, Sarah, the person's name was Sarah. I said, Sarah, are you a real person, or are you an AI CSR? And she came back and said, I'm such and such company's virtual assistant. And I said, okay, great. Well, what do I do next? And they said, we have all the information we need. Look to hear from somebody to schedule a call. Now, AI was a little bit confused why it couldn't schedule the call. It just basically got, what is the problem? And then they're going to pass the problem on to a human, I assume. But here's the issue. I called at about 5:45 p.m. and I never got a call for service. Not last night, not this morning. So at 11:20 this morning, I had forgotten all about it. My employee called and said, man, it's getting hot in here. Did you talk to the AC people? And I said, oh my gosh, I never heard back from them. I said, just give them another call since it's regular hours and tell them we need a warranty call. So I'm not convinced, for a couple of reasons, that AI is where we need it yet on this phone service. And I know a lot of people are trying it, moving to it into trades. But here's my issue with it as a consultant. This is a free piece of advice. This is something people would normally pay to get. That AI person cannot do what I need CSRs to do in order to grow your company. So this is what it would sound like if you were in the plumbing business, for example. My CSR is on the phone. Thank you for calling XYZ Plumbing. What can we help you with? Hey, my toilet's backed up. I've tried everything I can do. I've been plunging it for 3 hours. I can't get it. Great. Be glad to help you. What's your name, address, all the vitals. And then there's a set of questions. And one of the questions is, what's the age of your water heater? And the customer might say, what do you need the age of my water heater for? I'm calling about a clogged toilet. Well, Miss Jones, you see, in order to fix your toilet, we're going to have to cut off the main valve to your house. And most main house shutoff valves are near your water heater. And so I need to know the location, and we'd like to know the age of it, because most water heaters' life is 6 to 8 years. And it's just good to know when we start messing around that we have that information on file. They normally give it to you. If they don't know it, they might say, I have no idea how old my water heater is. In which case I would say, when did you buy the house? And they say, well, we bought the house in 2017. And I said, have you replaced the water heater since you bought the house? And they say, no, I haven't. Well, now I know it's at least 8 years old, right? So what am I doing? I'm setting up my technician to know exactly what he's walking into for sales opportunities. Now we're going to fix a toilet, but now we've already say, Miss Jones, while we're here, I know our CSR asked you, but are you aware that your water heater's 11 years old? Because he gets there, sees the date. Hey, these things only have a 6-year warranty. You're going to have a lot of sediment in it. When's the last time you had it flushed? Oh my gosh, you haven't had it flushed since you moved in 8 years ago? Yeah, I didn't know I was supposed to have it flushed. You understand how much sales ability can happen on that phone call and tee that technician up? And I've got an AI person just going, I'll get you on the schedule. And now we're going to the appointment cold. So I do believe that eventually AI will catch up and will be able to do those things. But I would caution service and trade business owners right now with that.
Yeah. So AI is there, but the problem is people don't know how to train their agent to facilitate that, right? So ours actually is really good, really good. And I completely agree with you. We're not ready for it. Talk to Amanda, our AI. So what we've done is Amanda answers the phone if there's overflow, because the CSR is on the phone, or after hours. Obviously, we're not going to answer the phone after hours or on the weekend. We're a legit business. We're not answering our cell phones. You're not calling our cell phone, but AI is there. It's 100% there. If you have the information. So I'll give you an example. I uploaded my entire operations manual into our AI agent. So it knows every service in and out. It knows how we perform those services, because I have deep descriptions on how to wash a house, how to wash a roof, how to do this, how to install gutters, when to clean gutters, best time to do this, best time to do that, right? I've got all of that information dialed in because I've been doing this for so long and my operating manual is thick. Most people don't have that. Most people don't think molecularly like you and I when systems are coming into play. And most people, it's all here. Well, if it's all here, then how are you going to get it to an AI? You can't do it. But if you can take your entire operations manual, your price list, your product information, your warranty information, you plug that all into AI, and then you teach your AI how to prompt, but how and when to ask the right questions. So for example, if somebody calls and they're asking for a gutter cleaning price, our AI knows to mention the gutter guards, thus a potential, but she won't do the sale, but she will bring it up and she'll say, I'll have so-and-so meet with you and discuss the benefits. And if they have any questions about the benefits, the AI already knows all of this stuff, right? So the thing that's really cool about it is that you can tell your CSR 100 times, blue in the face, right? Hey, make sure you always mention the gutter guard installs and the downspout flushing and mention all these ancillary services that we can make extra money on. And I'm telling you right now, unless you monitor every call, it's not going to happen. Well, AI is going to do it. It's a robot. And so there are benefits, but I completely agree with you. An AI doesn't have the ability to recognize that there's a tone on the other end of the phone, and maybe now's not the right time of gutter guards. So there's little nuances that people we're not there for sure. But another you can do that we've instituted with our AI is we're very intentional with that tone. We want the AI to recognize the tone, at least say, I tell that you're a little frustrated with this phone call. Can I transfer you to so-and-so? And it will work. Usually nobody's going to say, no, don't transfer me to a real person, right?
Well, I think you said something smart. You got to learn to train it. And that's certainly something that's coming. But the other thing that you said is they can do it repetitively. And I agree. I think if you get a CSR that's operating at, if they hit the mark 80% of the time, you're probably best in class, because humans have days and moods and, they forget and things like that. But yeah, I don't know. I think it'll catch up, but I think if you rely on it to grow your business, I think you're going to struggle. I don't think it can.
100% agree.
And cost and efficiency, but you're not going to generate the sales over the phone that companies that I work with. Like right now, I'm working with a company in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I love this story because they've been in business 83 years. Now, 83 years it took them to get to $5.5 million. The most they had ever done in a year was $6.8 million. $5.8 million. But when I met them, they were at 5.5, which means they had actually digressed a little bit over the last couple of years coming out of COVID. Me and my team started working with them. They're going to do just at 8.1 million this year. They're hitting new records. One big part of that, if you made the whole rest of this call, how did you help them grow? What are they doing? Was we put an inside sales team, and it's not AI. It's an inside sales team making outbound calls. Look, if you have 8 services you offer and 58% of your customers only have one service, you're sitting on 20, they're sitting based on their pricing chart, they're sitting on $20 million worth of growth without spending one extra dollar in marketing. They don't even need any more customers. They just need to sell the customers they got 3 services instead of 1 service. And so I'm sure, listen, like you and I said, we don't know it all. We're doing the best we can do in our worlds. I'm sure there are people out there that could debunk what I'm saying and say AI could be outbound, inbound, all the things into AI platforms that I've, seen and worked. And I've seen a lot of service trade companies try to use it, and after 30, 60 days, abandon it and go back to humans. So I'm sure it'll catch up with us, but it's certainly a debate.
Yeah, I don't think, obviously, Amanda does not answer our phone calls. It is overflow and after hours only. And there's a reason for that, because we do get the occasional curse, like, I'm not talking to a damn robot, because we get those messages. Sometimes we just laugh, right?
Yeah.
It's the funniest thing. Some people will talk to this robot for like 2.5, 3 minutes, have all of their questions answered. And then when called to follow up to schedule whatever the service is, they say, oh my gosh, that wasn't a real person. They have no idea. Yeah. So it is pretty incredible. So I want to talk more about this. Would you call it a call center?
Possibly. It depends on what you're talking about.
The CSR, you said inbound and outbound calls. Would you?
Yeah.
Let's go more in depth with that. Speak to me like you're consulting me. We have pressure washing, gutter guards. We're starting to add gutter installation. So we have a huge client list. It's over 1,000 clients, very local. What would you do day one?
Yeah. So if I walked into a company, and I always start with something called a success blueprint, right? I have this great presentation that I do for executive teams, and it's got this slide in it. It's Alice in Wonderland walking down this path, and she gets to a fork in the road, and there's this big tree, and there's a Cheshire cat sitting in a tree, and it comes from the movie. And she asked the cat, which path should I take? And the cat said, well, where do you want to go? And Alice in Wonderland says, I don't know. And then the cat said, well, then it doesn't matter, right? You have to know where you're trying to go. So I start with a success blueprint because I need to understand where the client is trying to go. And so let's say they're a $5 million company and they said, well, we're trying to get to 10, but we've been stuck in the 5s for 3 years. Okay, so that's a really good starting point. How do we create sustainable growth when they've not been able to do that? And what's special about what we bring to the table? So specifically talking about their CSR department, I would look, and let's just say they're on the smaller side, they got 8 CSRs. All right. Now, you've been doing this a long time in sales. Do you think if I walked in there, all 8 of them are salespeople?
No.
Not
even a third of them.
Because they're trying to control expenses, they'll have their same 8 CSRs randomly taking phone calls, which are marketed leads, right? Where did that phone call come from? So you're spending marketing dollars to generate a phone call. And so you've got, let's just call them CSR 1 through 8. They're all randomly answering the phone, whoever's next on the phone tree. And then when they get slow, they decide to do outbound phone calls, and they go to that same 8 CSR panel and say, we need you to make 30 outbound phone calls a day. Well, I'm sorry, CSR number 2 and CSR number 6 are going to have 2 separate sales abilities, and both of them might have no sales ability, right? And so we start out by determining who has the best sales ability. So what we do is we put a contest in place. And then it might be, let's say it's coming into the spring for mosquito season in a pest business. We say, okay, we're going to do pest control sales rally. You got to make X amount of calls. Whoever lands or whoever adds on the most mosquito services to current clients gets this prize. Well, the cream's going to rise to the top. Then I go to those people, and normally, let's say if it was 8, it might be 2 people. I say, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take you guys off of the CSR rotation and make you inside salespeople. Now, when somebody calls and says, I want to get a quote on X, the first person that answers the phone doesn't give the quote. They go, absolutely. Hang on 1 second. I'll get you over to Trevor. Well, then they transfer the call. Now this person is more trained and to overcome objections. How many other people have you talked to? How big is your house? What's your square footage? And we try to get this thing narrowed down. The other 6 CSRs that we have left, they're handling reschedule calls. They're handling complaint calls. I thought your technician was going to be here by 2. It's 2:15. Nobody's here. They're handling scheduling calls for regular scheduling, like, hey, Miss Jones, it's time to schedule a quarterly pest control. We can be there next Tuesday between 2 and 4. All the mundane stuff. Now everybody's in the right seats on the bus. And we started doing that. They had less than $100,000 in internal sales being sold from their CSR staff. Now they have an inside sales staff of only 2 people, and they're going to do close to $800,000 in sales this year from the inside because they have the right people handling the right calls inbound and outbound.
It blows my mind, honestly, how many times I hear stories like that where you're missing some minute.
Yes.
You're almost there.
Yeah.
Change this one little thing. Like, just those 3 people shouldn't be this. They should be doing that instead and following up with these leads. It blows my mind.
Right. Yeah. And in every business they have it. I know that the majority of your listeners are into trades, and I love the trades. I have spent the last 20 years coaching, training, owning trades. I've owned a pest control company, a plumbing company, coaching those companies. But these philosophies literally work in a bakery, a butcher shop. Right now in our stable for consulting clients, we have a charter school. We have a site clearing company. We've got several pest control companies, bakery. It works. Every single one of these, I can find that minute strategy. Okay, take the bakery, for example. Yeah, they don't have inbound sales calls, but do you have, and I experienced this in this very company, and this is how I landed them as a client. I basically called the owner and said, this is who I am, and I'm eating in your place 3 times in the last 2 weeks. And I was wondering if you'd be open to me just sharing my experience. And he said, absolutely. And I said, can we have coffee? I go meet him and I go, this is what I do for a living. I grow companies. Can I give you some suggestions? And maybe, just maybe, you'd be interested in working with me. Dude, these companies put an 18, 19-year-old girl behind a register who doesn't know how to smile, who doesn't know how to cross sell. They just go, can I help you? Like in this drab voice, and you go, yeah, I guess I'll take a chocolate scone. Okay, that'll be $8.06. And they don't have anything like, oh, did you realize we have a special right now? You can get 2 scones and a cup of coffee for $11.99. Like, the customer's there, they're hot, they have their wallet out. You're not leveraging the fact that the customer has already gotten to your spot. And so, granted, we're systems and process people, and I teach systems and processes. I have thousands of files that I can alter and edit and customize for clients. But the true growth just comes from unlocking the ability to sell more to the current client that you have. That's what maximum yield is. I didn't have to spend another dollar to get another client into that bakery's shop. All I had to do was get the lady to take the ticket from $8 to $12.
You know, I understand why that business owner was operating the way he was, because we're all doing it. As an entrepreneur, business owner, specifically in the service industry, the problems don't slow down, right? We're constantly putting out fires. That's what we do. Or we create solutions where there is an issue. So that girl wasn't a big enough problem. The fire was large enough. So we have all these other things that we're trying to pay attention to. And all right, let's work on that. Let's focus on this. You know, I got to get to her eventually. She's definitely not great, but she's okay. So I'm going to, I'll get to that when I get to it. And so what happens is we get to a place where it's like, all right, fires are under control. Everything feels comfortable. I want to breathe for a minute. And then you look at her again, and you're like, okay, I could work with her, but I'm comfortable. I want to breathe. So it's like, we just get comfortable. It's hard to look at everything from a molecular standpoint unless you have a coach. It's like, hey man, what are you doing? Straighten that up.
This is where it all comes from. And this is going to be, out of an hour of chatting, this is one of the nuggets, right? Like, if your podcast producer pulls out 3 nuggets for shorts, this is one of them. The entrepreneur has to know what they want out of these 3 things. Do they want time, money, or control? Time, money, or control, but they can only have 2. They're going to assess these types of things, because watch this. That bakery will go hire an 18-year-old for $12 an hour and call her a cashier, and she will consistently ring up an $8 ticket. But if you will develop a plan where that 18-year-old can take $12 an hour and you give her a commission on selling the 2 scones and a cup of coffee for $12, then she makes more money. She makes you more money. She's not as likely to leave over a quarter an hour when the restaurant up the street calls her, right? Because we all know hiring is one of the biggest pain in the butts we deal with, and it costs you 150% of the cost of one person to replace them. You've got all this downtime. It probably throws you back into business running the cash register. It's just bad all the way around when you lose people. So we're trying to create them not leaving because they're making more money. Now you're making more margin, right? The door swing's already happened. But here's why owners don't do it. Because if money is not their primary objective, if time is their primary objective, Now I got to go build a commission structure, and I got to put it in a POS, and I got to run reports every month and do payroll. And versus just if they just clock in and clock out, man, it does it for you. QuickBooks will calculate it. It's $12 an hour. Well, now I got to go track what this 18-year-old sold and what her $47 commission check is. And then owners don't want to do that. But some do. Some of my clients do because they're in it for the money. So you tell me which two you want, and I can always tell a client how to structure their business. You know, they go, hey, I've been doing this 20 years, man. I've made a nice living, but I'm getting to a place in my life where I want money and time. All right. What that means is I'm going to get some money, not all the money, but I'm going to get some money, and I'm going to get some of my time back. I'm going to go start spending some time with my family, but I'm going to have to hire a GM, which is why I can't take all the money. I got to spend some of the money on the GM, but I'm giving up the control to the GM. That's what money and time looks like. But if you want money and control, man, you can make all the money and all the decisions and be the boss and the GM and the owner and all the things, but you ain't gonna have any time. You're gonna work 70, 80, 90 hours a week, right? So you just can't have all three. And I always push my clients, in order to help them, I need to know which two they're looking for.
Which two is Mickey Lyles looking for?
Right now, I am in a time and money section of my life. I've just come out of about 15 years of just straight money and control, straight money and control. I did 3 interviews yesterday, 2 interviews today. We're onboarding some new consultants. We're working on training people. You know, I love Dan Martell. He's my flavor of 2025. Buy back your time.
Sure.
Right?
For sure.
Just buy back your time. And, you know, we all know it. Everybody talks about it. You know, you got people like Gary V and Brad Lee and all the names out there. Everybody says the same thing. You know, our slither of life is this big, and I turned 50 years old this year. And, you know, to some people, it's just a birthday is just a birthday. But honestly, 50 impacted me. Remember earlier I said I didn't believe anybody would listen to you until you were 40. At 50, it made a big impact. I'm like, you know what? I got 50 years of this. You know, maybe somebody should listen. You know, I'm doing some things. So right now, I'm just trying to train others. I'm trying to build a legacy, but I'm working on time and money. I am taking a few more Friday afternoons and trying to spend a little bit more time with the family. And that's kind of where I'm at. How about Trevor?
Same, time and money. I'm looking for a little less control is what I'm looking for. And I'll tell you why. I think I'm in that stage. I've got a 15-year-old who's about to get her driver's license. I've got a 13-year-old who is on the verge of not caring about mommy and daddy anymore. Yeah. Exactly. And I've got a 10-year-old boy who obsessed with soccer and hunting and just wants to be with dad. And it's, you know, it's fleeting. It's fleeting. And so I think over the next 5 years, that's what I'm going to be fighting for. A little bit more time, a little less control, definitely the money. None of us without the money. So if money's not in one of the 2 options that you choose, right, you're probably in trouble already. Yeah. So yeah, time and money. And then I think I'm probably like you. I'll probably be diving right back in head first. But I say that probably am not going to slow down.
Yeah, no, I think true entrepreneurs don't really have a lot of slowdown in them. It's really hard for us. People keep telling me, my wife's 6 years younger than I am. And so she can retire with 30 years at her job at 53 years old, which would make me 59-ish, 59 and a half. And it just so happens that you can access your 401k at 59 and a half. And so we had this pipe dream that, hey, you know, you'll be 53, I'll be 59, we'll sell off into the wild blue. But everybody that knows me is like, you've lost your lid. You won't do it. I mean, I will maybe do a lot more, but I don't think you can really let go. I think it's part of the fabric of who we are. It's not even work anymore, right? Like, it's so exciting helping other people win and just being in conversations like this. I love collaboration. Some people get worn out with like boardroom meetings and things. Dude, I love it. I just love being with other entrepreneurs. I love being in rooms of smart people and seeing what I can learn. Yeah,
it's funny because anytime you call me or I call you, we're like, all right, listen, this is going to be 5 minutes. And then 45 minutes later, we're like, and that didn't go according to plan. Yeah, 100%. But yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. I don't see myself ever slowing down. People tell me what's the end goal, and it's like.
But here's what I want. You know, here's what I would say too with this platform, to just have random strangers hear a message from somebody they've never seen before. Look, if you want to be Tommy Mello or Jimmy Hiller or Grant Cardone, more power to you, man. That is awesome. That is amazing. But none of those guys got there without doing 100 hours a week for 30 years. They just didn't do it. Dave Ramsey, I mean, he's doing hundreds of millions of dollars, written all these books, does a radio show, and he goes, yeah, we're the overnight success that took 35 years. Like, there is a price to pay for that. And I think that me and you are probably similar. I know when I was 38, 40 years old, I'm like, oh, I'm going to do all this. Dude, just be comfortable in your own skin. Like, just build your own vision board, build your own dreams, set your own goals, and go do your thing, man. I'm not going to sit here in front. I went through some years where I was very successful, but felt like a failure because I was comparing myself to these people that are just bulldogging it, man, and that is awesome. I think it comes from a lot of hard work. I'm not taking anything away, but you got to have some luck. You got to be in the right place at the right time. You got to make some really dangerous, brave decisions. And that is awesome. I am all for it if that's what you want to do. But I'm at a place now where, you know what? I just don't need a Lamborghini. I'd rather take 2 weeks off and go on vacation with my wife, and so just know where you're at and know what success means like to you. And don't just think it, like write it down, make it a goal, talk to your wife about it. Like, what does success? We kind of coined in Immeasura. It started from out of Buy Back Your Time in Dan Martell's book. He calls it DOD, the definition of done. And now we've coined in our business DOS. When we meet with a client, when we do our debriefing after we've gotten their financials and we've met with them, we go, okay, guys, what is our DOS, the definition of success for this client? And then, of course, we take that back to them. Would you consider this a win? I think you got to do that for your personal life. What's the definition of success?
Yeah, I love that. I've been doing a lot of that this year, honestly, and I'm at more peace this year than I have been in probably ever, honestly.
Yeah.
And I'm nowhere near where I told myself I would be.
Sure.
At this point, because all us entrepreneurs, we're a little bit crazy, a little bit delirious, definitely irrational, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we have these goals. I was supposed to be running a $50 million company by now, in my brain, in my mind. But if I'm being completely honest with myself, and this came up in the last podcast last week, I don't want to be that person. Yeah. I don't want to do what is required to run a $50 million company. That's just not. Yeah, that's not in the cards for me. I've got 3 kids. I love my life. I love that wife just got back from Cabo, Mexico for a week, and it was nothing. It wasn't a big deal. Didn't cost much. Flyer miles paid for the trip because of that card, and it was just a great experience. It's a write-off because it was a business trip, and I'm happy with that. I'm happy living that life. So I don't know, things change, and I think this is an important conversation. I think so many people with social media see people like Tommy Mello, and like you said, love Tommy. I've met him several times. Great guy, but I don't want to be Tommy Mello. Yeah. I don't want to make the sacrifices he's had to make. He doesn't have kids. He's engaged, but no, dude, I want to be who I am. Wow. I like the life that God has given me and my path. Grounding yourself. I wish I wasn't 30. Shoot, I don't even know how old I am. 39 years old. That I'm exactly where I want to be. It's it's the truth, though. It's the truth.
Yeah, there's a lot of health in that and a lot of peace that comes with that. And that doesn't mean, again, success can be literally anything. It can just be, $1 million a year. It can be 10, 50. It doesn't matter. Just know your path and be comfortable with it. It's just a very powerful place to live.
Yeah. Just a little bit about, because I feel like the audience might be listening thinking, man, this guy's got a lot of knowledge, but where does it come from? Tell us a little bit about what you've done in your consulting career. You don't have to give it in numbers or anything like that, but I know for a fact, a local company, you were hired as a consultant and you just exploded that company.
Yeah, I'll give some numbers. I think that's the value of what we do is in the numbers. But yeah, like I mentioned early on, around 2013 or so, 2014, I opened my first consulting company and really was in the pest space, isolated because that's what I really knew. It took me a couple of years to figure out that what I was doing there would work about anywhere. But yeah, I worked with that company about 8 years, and they were one that had been in business, I think 53 years when I met them. They were also doing $5.5 million. I know that's the same number I gave you for the other company, but that was just ironic. In 8 years, we went from 5.5 million to 21 million, and they exited to private equity for $79 million, which was unbelievable, right?
Hallelujah.
Good for them, good for him. I mean, again, I was just a consultant, right? So, but the program worked and I was able to document the repeatable processes. And, honestly, man, 7, 8 years ago, it was easier on me because I had something that other people weren't so aware of. Private equity came in, started buying all the home service companies, HVAC, plumbing, pest control. And with that, here comes the drove of consultants. We're going to help you grow your company. We're going to help you scale.
Sure.
We're going to help you do all these things. Trying not to make it a plug, but I'm still going to say to your people, here's the deal. 3 weeks ago, I filled out an application to be on Brad Lee's podcast. And the way they presented it was that it was an application that they were looking for people that went from nothing to something, sort of your comeback story, thought my story fit perfectly. And it ended up being a complete sales funnel. And I was quoted $25,000 just to be on the podcast, right? It's just a sales funnel. So here's what I try to tell everybody. Are you actually going to be able to talk to Brad Lee? No. Are you going to be able to talk to Grant Cardone? No. I mean, you can if you want to pay $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 to be these 10X events and all those types of things. I'm teaching the same stuff and I'm touchable. You can pick up the phone, call my office, get on my schedule. You can work with us and you can literally learn the exact same things. There's several, and I won't name them because I'm not trying to throw mud at anybody, but there's several home service coaching companies out there that charge $50,000, $60,000 just to get in the door, just to walk in the door. And all they're teaching you is a framework. And I teach the exact same framework, not the exact same. I have my own proprietary blend of it, but it's the same theories and it's the same strategies for a fraction of their cost, right? So yeah, I mean, we've done some good things for a lot of home service companies. As you know, I had a client that was in a plumbing space. After working with him for a year as a consultant, I bought into the company. We 2.5x'd it in 18 months. And then I sold my interest because I really like the consulting space versus the day-to-day operations. But I mean, that company's doing fantastic. They just added HVAC and I think they're going to go to the moon. I mean, I really do. I think they're doing fantastic.
There's no question. Yeah, I keep running into them at the soccer field, actually.
Yeah,
and, they seem like they're just getting started.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about private equity moved into the space. I don't know, less than a decade ago. It feels like, and we talked a little bit about how certain people will move into an industry and just dump money at marketing, dump money at CSRs even before they need it, dump money at the call center and the sales team and all this stuff. How do we compete with these type of private? I mean, do we compete or do we just boots on the ground and hope to survive?
Yeah, so I'll tell you what I learned. So this is another reason why we're good people to work with if you're trying to scale to sell or scale to create legacy, either one we work with. But when we sold the plumbing company, they wanted to know how we scaled so fast. And I'm not taking 100% credit. We had a fantastic executive team. We had a great staff of people, mid-level managers. Everybody did their part. But I certainly can claim certain strategies, certain sales strategies, certain things I brought to the equation. But the private equity firm that bought us actually took me onto their mergers and acquisitions team for a year. And so I got to see behind the curtain. I got to see what the evaluation process was. I got to see exactly what they were looking for and what creates the highest multiples. And here's the crazy thing, and this blows my mind. I still don't understand it. Within 12 months of buying our company, they stripped the employees by 33%. They raised the prices by 35%. So shove costs down, shove revenue up. They almost ran off a cliff. Like they were losing, I don't know, last I heard, I wasn't internal, but last I heard, and this was a few years ago, they had lost like 30% of their client base. Because when you reduce your CSR staff that much and nobody answers the phone, you're on a 20-minute hold to get somebody to answer, right? Or your technician staff is not, keeping up with the quantity of customers. It's crazy. So that was interesting to me. It's like you buy a company that's literally operating at maximum efficiency with great margins. Everybody's doing their job and we're growing double digits every year. I'm talking 12 to 20% every year for 7 years in a row. And you go, man, y'all's company is so great. We're giving you top dollar for it. And I'm telling you, it was top dollar. And then you strip it all down and you break down everything that we have built. So what I learned from that is you can do more with less. That's what I learned. So while they lost 30% of their customers, because they raised the price 35%, they didn't lose a lot of revenue. Then the customers came back after the smoke cleared, right? A year goes by, everybody moves and changes companies. New people move to the area. They don't know anything about it. They use you. You got all the marketing going. And that's where I started learning you can do more with less. And I started turning down the crank on this maximum yield strategy. And, look, I support marketing. We need marketing. It depends on where you're at in your journey. But I'm just telling you, I can normally find, and this is a really broad number, right? It depends on the business, but let's just say 20% growth Sometimes it's 80. That's why I'm scared to say a number. But 20% growth, like in 48 hours without you spending another dime on marketing. It's just, are you looking at it correctly, right?
Yeah.
Let me share this quick analogy about that. I share this when I speak at conferences. In the old days, in like the 30s and 40s and 50s, before cell phones ruined billiards gambling, when these pool hustlers would go from town to town and they go to these pool halls always had the pool table on the floor, and then there would be what they call the rail. And the rail always had a couple of steps to get up to it, and it was a thin bar that kind of wrapped around the pool table, and spectators could sit up there and enjoy a beverage of their choice while they looked out on the table. When you're sitting at that rail, you can see shots on that pool table that the player can't see, because the player is so close to the action, right? He's in the balls, he's looking at them, and he can't see it. But if you get to that 35,000 foot view or that rail view, you can go, why is he not shooting that shot? That shot's right there. And really, that's where a good consultant and that's why we don't say Immeasura consultants. We're growth partners, man. If you work with us, I'm standing beside you, and we're going to make sure we have deliverables that execute. And if we do our job, we should be free at the end of the contract, right? You should grow and we should be free at the end of the contract. But I just think that's a good analogy on how people can just see angles that you might not see.
Yeah, it's like when you go to a restaurant, right? The restaurant owner, even the manager, they're too close. They don't see the dirty vents and the dust collecting on the fans, and that they don't see that stuff. They don't smell the nasty kitty kitchen and floors and carpets. You know, they just don't see it. I mean, you own restaurants, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like you need somebody to walk in and just tell you the truth. Like, hey, listen, here.
That's why I try not to go to my restaurants but once a month, so I can still see it through the eyes of a consultant. No, I really don't go because I'm scared they'll put me to work in the kitchen.
You wouldn't know what to do if they did.
No, well, not unless they were cooking barbecue, but.
Oh, that's true. I've seen you out back smoking meats.
Yeah.
Man, this is awesome. We're at an hour and 2 minutes. You never even knew where this was going to go. I think these are important conversations, a little bit about mental fortitude and what it takes, and having the blueprint and knowing where you want to go, and a little bit about pride and reality. Important conversations, man. I think if there's anybody out there listening that's considering the right strategic partner to help get them to the next level, I can tell you without a doubt from my heart, Mickey Lyles is the real deal. I'm lucky enough to call him a friend. He answers the phone when I call, so I'm just going to keep taking advantage of that until he tells me I owe him money. And I really appreciate you, Mickey. I appreciate you being here. Y'all go check out Immeasura.com. Jai, if you're there, throw that in the chat. Look at that.
Yeah,
he's so fast.
He's on. Man, I appreciate you having me. I want these to be my parting words. People ask us all the time, and this was one of the greater marketing plays that I've ever stumbled upon. But what does Immeasura mean? Immeasura comes from Ephesians 3:20. Now to him that can do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine. But here's the thing. Most people stop right there and they go, man, my God is great. My God's got favor on my life. He can do anything that I ask or imagine, way more than I ask or imagine. And they stop there and they make it about God. And it is about God. But this is the most important part of the verse, in my opinion, is the next part. According to his power at work within us. See, it doesn't happen if you don't do it, right? Joyce Meyer says you can't do God's part and he won't do your part. So my advice is get up every morning, have gratitude, get ready for the day, and go do your part. And whatever you dream, whatever you want, you can have, because I came from nothing and I've reached my DOS.
Let's go. Hey, Jai, give me my theme music. Appreciate y'all. Through the Noise podcast, Trevor Steele with Mickey Lyles. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you on the next one.